A wonderful introduction. So, good morning everyone, my name is Sandro Guerra. Before I start, I'd like to thank the John Chappell Natural Philosophy Society for creating this conference and for creating this space to allow us to think and speak up.
He's getting live on Facebook. He's watching himself there, so it's working. Thank you for the test. Thank you.
So as I was saying, I want to thank the John Chappell Natural Philosophy Society for creating this conference. I want to thank Dr. Robert De Hilster and David De Hilster for the introduction and for all the effort creating and promoting this conference. Dr. Gerard Pollack for his enthusiasm and his commitment to keep an open mind in science. And lastly, the University of Washington for providing this space for people to think and speak outside the box. So, I want to start by saying that, unlike most of you, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a biologist, and I'm not claiming to be one. I did study science for 3 years at the City College of New York, but in 2012 I dropped out and I decided to pursue this idea and this project on my own. I did graduate from art. I have a degree in art from the New School University from Parsons. My expertise and my talent lies in observation. And that's something you get with a good art education. So I'd like to talk a little bit about some of my professors. I had the pleasure, this distinct pleasure and honor to study with two amazing classical artists. One of them was Leonard Anderson. I used to go, when I was studying at the New School, I used to go to Brooklyn College every weekend to take a class on classical painting, from the model, the old-fashioned way, which was what I was interested in. And then after graduation, I had the pleasure and the honor to study with Nelson Shanks, another extraordinary American painter. Unfortunately, they both passed away now. But I mention this because all these terrific painters had a mantra. They used to always say, take a step back and look at the whole thing. Take a step back and take a look at the model, take a look at the painting, and look at the whole thing. Don't get concerned with tiny little details. Because sometimes when we're doing a painting, we're too concerned with doing the perfect eye, the perfect nose, the perfect lips, and we are looking at very close, and when we take a step, we think that we're doing Rembrandt, but when we take a step back, we realize it's a Frankenstein. I think I said it because in science, today we are very concerned. So, the mirror model is a very, very, very simple theory or hypothesis. It's not complicated at all. It simply states, it compares the body, it's based on a symmetry principle. It compares the body to something similar to, let's say, an equation. And I hate to say to you guys, this is the only equation you're gonna see today from me. So, if we look at an equation is a statement with two parts. Even though 1 plus 2 doesn't look like 3, both sides of the equation have the same intrinsic value. They are two expressions of the same principle. And I think something very similar is happening in complex life forms. We can also compare these to a crazy mirror effect. When you step in front of a crazy mirror, your image gets deformed. But both you and the image are two expressions of the same principle. So, I think the body, like an equation, it consists of two fundamental parts that are two expressions of the same principle. So, I have come to the conclusion that these two parts are no other than the head and the rest of the body. And therefore, all the structures in the head are iterated in the body. Actually, most of the structures in the head are iterated in the body. But, you will think that I probably smoked something funny because the head doesn't look at all like the rest of the body. And if you know any biology, you will know that the brain is made out of nervous tissue, and all the organs in the body are made out of a completely different set of tissues that have nothing to do with the brain. They don't even have the same cytological origin. So this seems like a lot of nonsense. This also seems to contradict Ed Lewis' theory of development by mosaic, which is the leading view of development today, and it's been proven thousands of times. But if we want to understand the mirror model, we have to look at the pre-embryonic process. We developed from a sandwich of 3 germinal tissues, the ectoderm, the mesoderm, and the endoderm. The cheese in the sandwich, we get the circulatory system, the muscles, the skeletal system, and of course organs like the kidneys, the heart, and the reproductive organs. From the endoderm, we get with the.
Do you want a pointer?
Yes.
The pointer's there. I just have to unzoom it all.
No.
Right there. There's the pointer. And I can
Okay, great. Thanks. From the endoderm, we get the lungs, the livers, and the digestive tract. So, if this model is correct, what's happening is very simple. The ectoderm would be following the same principle as the endoderm follows to create the brain. So, when the ectoderm is creating the nervous system and the brain, the endoderm will be following the same principle to create the lungs, the liver, and the digestive tract. On the other hand, the mesoderm, the middle of the sandwich, is also following this mirror effect, but within itself. So, in this case, we won't have the tissue issue because everything comes from the same germinal, the same germinal tissue. So, this will be more or less what will be happening here. This will be the ectoderm, this will be the endoderm. They will be following the same principle, but in opposite direction. I have to clarify that I'm not implying here that these things happen simultaneously. They don't happen simultaneously. However, I do think they are following the same principle. So, you may wonder, how did I come up with this idea? Secret entry below an altar filled with skulls. So he asked his disciple Atso to poke one of the skulls in the eyes, and lo and behold, the altar moves and the entry is revealed. Something similar happened to me. So during this class, for some reason, I bumped into, this is the scene of the Name of a Rose where Atso clicks the eye, pokes the eye of the skull. So I did something very similar. I poked the eye of the skull. The skull and the rest of the skeleton doesn't look at all like the same thing, but there's a head that gives everything away. I bumped into this image when I was taking this class on the brain, and I thought to myself that the obturator foramina, the holes on the pelvic bone, looked a lot like the orbits, like the eye sockets. And today I am convinced that the eye sockets, the obturator foramina, are actually the counterpart of the eye sockets. That they are the inferior eye sockets. So now we have a big problem, because if the pelvic bone if the obturator foramina are the counterpart of the eye sockets, then we're supposed to have a frontal bone in the belly, and it would be very uncomfortable to walk around with a frontal bone in the abdomen. So fortunately, this is not the case. So this helps me make a point, because I don't believe all these electional structures are iterated in a one-to-one relation. I think some of them could be latent or semi-express. I think this is the case of the frontal bone. Otherwise, other animals like a snake or fish, they wouldn't fit into this model. I think this model encompasses at least most complex life. So, for years, scientists have wondered why is it that we have so much bone marrow in the crest of the ilium and the rib cage. And if this model is correct, the absence of the frontal bone that never develops on the abdomen would be justifying this abundance of bone marrow in these areas. Also, I think the rectus sheath, this white tissue on top of the abdomen, could be responsible for this semi-expressed frontal bone. So following this order, the rib cage will be the parietal bones, The sternum and the manubrium would be the occipital bone. The ilium would be the parietal, no. Would be this bone. The sphenoid would be the coccyx and part of the vertebral column. The scapula would be the maxilla would be the superior extremity. The superior extremities, the mandible would be the inferior extremities. The hyoid bone would probably be the clavicles. And even though the teeth doesn't come from the mesoderm, they come from the ectoderm, but they are always included on the skeleton, so I'm going to include them too. So the most obvious counterpart of the teeth would be, of course, the nails. So this is an artistic rendition of the skeleton arranged as a skull according to the parameters of the mirror model to give you like a visual picture of what relates to what. This is like a list, a catalog of mirror structures, alleged mirror structures. So the parietal bones would be the rib cage, the occipital bone would be the sternum and the manubrium. Well, I think I'm skipping something, but I'm going to move forward. So how do what evidence is for this hypothesis? So obviously I don't have the technology or the resources to make research, or the resources to make research in this direction. So I have looked for symptoms, and functions that support this mirror effect, this alleged mirror effect, and I have found quite a few. So with regard to the skeletal system, or these structures I just mentioned, there's a syndrome called tooth and nail syndrome, or TSN. And the consequences of this syndrome is that the people with this mutation have ill formation of the teeth and the nails, which, as you may remember, they're parallel structures on this model. But one of the most important pieces of evidence on behalf of the mirror model is something called the antennapedia mutation. The antennapedia mutation is very important in biology because it was instrumental to prove Ed Lewis' model of development by mosaics. So when fruit fly has the antennapedia mutation, they grow antennae on the face. It's called antennapedia because people think they grow out legs from the antennae, but this is not the case. They really grow legs from the maxilla. So the mutation occurs on the maxilla, and as you may remember, the maxillar is a counterpart of the arms in this model. Here you go. So the image on the right is just a joke of how a person would look if they had the antennapedia mutation. So I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk now about the organs in the body and the alleged counterparts in the head. So the first organ we find, if we look top to bottom, would be the lungs. And I believe the counterpart of the lungs is no other than the cerebellum. The lungs are concerned with respiration, and all involuntary reflexes are controlled by the hypothalamus. However, it has been found that the cerebellum it's control or is implicated in the regulation of movement, of respiratory modulation. And if you're an artist, if you're a critical thinker artist, there's a Cuban guitar player called Leo Brauer. He always talks about how important is respiration for you to coordinate your movement and to play a piece properly. So also there's a study that took place at the Zurich University by Dr. Bernasconi and Dr. J. Kolb that have found that there's that if you organize your breathing, your running is also more organized. And of course you can find all this reference at the mirror model. In this order, between the lungs, we find the heart. Now, the heart is hard to find a counterpart for the heart because nothing in the head seems to look like a heart. But the heart has a peculiarity. It develops from the mesoderm. Unlike most of the organs in the body, the heart doesn't develop from the endoderm. It develops instead from the mesoderm. So I look for structures in the head of mesodermal origin, and I have found that the most obvious counterpart for the heart is no other than the eyes. But not only the eyes. I believe the counterpart of the heart is the eyes and the pineal gland, and the heart will be really joined with the thymus gland as a complex. So I have called the image on the right the ocular pineal complex, and the image on the left the cardiothymus complex. I think these structures come; they're part of an integral team, so to speak. So if we look at, in this case, by the way, each hemisphere of the heart would be a counterpart of an eye. So if we look at a cross-section of a heart and a cross-section of an eye, we will find striking similarities. Inside the heart, we'll find something called the papillary muscles, and then you see these structures called cordiae tendiniae. The function of these structures is to pull open the heart valves, and likewise, inside the eyes, we find the ciliary body, or muscle, and we find also some structure called the thonular fibers, which attach to the lens to focus the eye. And the resemblance between these structures is, I believe, remarkable. So, what could be the functional relation between the heart and the eyes? They don't seem to have a lot in common. But if we think about it, the heart produces the largest electric field in the body. And this is why I think these organs are the engine of the mirror bubble. In every heartbeat, the electric field has a peak. On the other end of the body, in the head, we have the second largest electric field. And if we think about it, the circadian rhythm, or the dream cycle, also have peaks and valleys. So I believe that the circadian rhythm is a counterpart of the cardiac rhythm. And the circadian rhythm has been associated with the pineal gland and the eyes because it's affected by the intake of light. So, then I asked myself a question, a very important question. What was first, the chicken or the egg? Now, I think, what if, I thought to myself, what if these organs, simple cell, is able to turn into the coherent orchestra that we are? We know a lot about, Hox genes and cascade reactions and so on, but we don't have something that gives coherence to this process. We don't have an orchestra director. I think that these electric rhythms could be instrumental on the modulation of the development of the embryo. I think they could be present even at the pre-embryonic stage. Why do I believe that? I believe that because the cell, during mitosis, this is a cell during mitosis, it has been found that the microtubules during this process are charged. And this knowledge has enabled us to create a technology called TT fields. This is a cancer therapy that inhibits mitosis by bombarding the cells with external fields. And I thought to myself, what if these two electromagnetic rhythms were modulating the promoting or inhibiting the cell division in the pre-embryonic process through the fluctuation? This would be more or less what I'm talking about. So I think this would revolutionize the way we see development. And the experiment we could do to test this idea could be quite very simple, really. We just have to take a fertilized egg and monitor the electric distribution of the egg throughout the process of development. And I don't know really if we have the technology to do this, but if we can measure the voltage in a microtubules, I think we can do it. This image, what I'm trying to get across here is that biology sees the cell as a unit of life. I don't take this position. I think life is something wider. I think life is an electromagnetic phenomenon, and I think it emerged as a cell, well, or a squirrel, but I think practically everything is alive, and I think life is an electromagnetic phenomenon. And I think the body is a fractal version of the cell, and at the same time a fractal version of the earth. If we look at this iron field experiment, you will see that it's very similar to the dividing cell. And also the bug. I brought here the Mandelbrot set because it is very similar, given the fact that the Mandelbrot set has two polarities, or what Laurie would call singularities, which are at the points of 0 and 1. And I think this can be related to what the phenomenon, I believe, takes place in the body. And this is a vertebral column, and this is the interference pattern in the magnetic field. So I find there's a lot of similarities here, and I think this is one of the images that tells me that probably the process of development is ruled by an electromagnetic phenomenon instead of just by genes. So, well, following this order, right below the lungs we find the liver. The liver is very easy to identify. The control part is very easy to identify. It will be the pituitary gland. I think the resemblance is remarkable. And on this order, the nervous chiasma would be a counterpart of the gallbladder. Next to the liver, we find the stomach. And from this point forward, we have a problem because we have two hemispheres in the brain, and we only have one digestive tract. I don't know exactly what causes this inconsistency. I have speculated that the yolk sac could be responsible for the missing hemisphere in the body, but I'm not too sure of this conjecture. So if the putamen is the counterpart of the stomach, the pancreas would probably be a counterpart of the hypothalamus. The hippocampus follows the putamen, so it probably would be a counterpart of the small intestine. And the colon would be a counterpart of the cerebrum. And this is very important because cerebrum is, there's a lot of evidence that seem to be supporting this association. So we have to emphasize the fact that we have over 100 million neurons on the digestive tract, and it has been found that people with IBS and bowel problems have a tendency to develop dementia, and people with colorectal cancer tend to develop cognitive problems. People with autism have a lot of problems with leaky gut, and all these seem to support this analogy between the colon and the cerebrum. So this is very important because for many years we have been trying to learn how we think, but to do that we have to study mainly the brain. And from the point of view of the neurologist, like watching a soccer game by trying to understand a soccer game by watching only half of the field. So I believe the process of thinking can be compared to the process of playing a guitar. So to play a guitar, you don't only play one side of the instrument. To play a guitar, you have to coordinate the left hand, the movement on the left hand. You have to set the tone with the left hand and strum the strings on the other side of the instrument. I think something very similar happens in the nervous system. So I think, of course, music is not at all the same as going on in the body, but this is an analogy to explain what I think is going on. I think to create the thoughts we're thinking, we don't only use the brain. I think thinking is about the coordination or the setting of coursing at the gut level, coordinating that with what's going on in the brain, opening channels to play on station, so to speak. And I think if we can understand the grammar between these two phenomena, we may be able to understand how thinking actually works. How can we test this? Very simple. We just repeat all the tests we have done with the brain, but we observe the whole body. We observe the guts, and we observe what happens in the brain. So, by the way, I also think that we may be able to find Brodmann areas in the digestive tract. Brodmann areas, so not below on the sides of the back we have the kidneys. The kidneys is one of these organs that come from mesodermal tissue, the middle of the sandwich, like the heart. So the counterpart of the kidneys should also be of mesodermal tissue, and I believe the counterpart of the kidneys is no other than the ear. This is a cross section of the cochlea compared to a cross section of the kidneys, and as you can see, there's some resemblance there. But there's also something that is very revealing. There's a syndrome called BOR, bronchorenal syndrome. People with this condition show malformation in the ears, and at the same time they have malformation in the kidneys, which is quite a coincidence. So after the kidneys, we have the reproductive organs. The reproductive organs are also part of they also rise from the mesodermal tissue, and we have to keep in mind that for this model, the heart is a sensorial, the counterpart of the heart is a sensorial organ, is the eyes. The counterpart of the kidneys is a sensorial organ, the ear. And following this model and keeping in mind the images we've seen before, I wonder if anybody has any guess for what could be the counterpart of the olfactory system. I mean, it will fall exactly where the nose falls. So, what's curious about the olfactory system is that we have these two parts in the body with a great deal of erectile tissue. And these two parts are the penis or the clitoris and the nose. Not only the nose, we also have erectile tissue on the sucking tubes and some on the pituitary gland, if I'm not mistaken. But this is huge because these two counterparts that seem to be, that I claim are mirror images, they both have the largest concentration of erectile tissue in the body. So sometimes when you can't read, it's because you have an erection. This I have to say that this was brought to my attention by a close friend of mine called Sergio Delgado. He's a doctor in California. I was a bit confused of what could be the counterpart of nose. So there's a very revealing syndrome called Kalman syndrome that also establishes a relation between the reproductive organs and the nose. It's called Kalman syndrome. People with this condition are unable to reach puberty, and they have highly underdeveloped reproductive organs. And at the same time, they have very little or no sense of smell whatsoever. And this fits right into the model. So these are some of the parallel structures of the organs in the body and the alleged counterparts in the head. So I also have to mention that there was an experiment performed at Harvard University by Dr. Catherine Dulac, She was studying the behavior of rodents, the sexual behavior of rodents, so she made an experiment. She took a group of female rats, she erased, through genetic engineering, she erased an organ in the nose called the vomeronasal organ. And the control group, nothing happened. And the rats with the vomeronasal organ deleted, they start behaving like males. They mounted other female rats from behind. They didn't care about the offspring. They showed aggression towards males. They completely changed their sexual behavior, and this also fits into the model. This experiment is important because it shows that it opens a possibility to think that maybe using genetic engineering we could find evidence of contraparts already mentioned here. So I have a prediction of alleged contraparts, and if we do perhaps genetic engineering and we extrapolate variations of mutation like antennapedia or VOR or TSN into other parts of the genome, we may find effects on the phenotype that reflect these alleged mirror structures. So probably I'm forgetting something, but I was through. So if you have any questions now, I probably have more questions, so we can exchange questions and maybe get to some answers.
I'm going to make a comment. One of the things that was fascinating, actually, the fractal part of this whole situation is it reminded me when I was talking with Lori Gardner.
I said life is not an isolated phenomenon that happens in the cell by itself. I think everything is life. I think the Earth itself is alive, life, and this may contradict the view of other biologists. But I think the Earth is actually alive, and the life is an electromagnetic phenomenon. The generation of the electromagnetic field is what generates the life of the Earth and what makes it alive. So I think this electromagnetic phenomenon has like a fractal, like a mirror effect within every living species, every living creature in the Earth is just doing the same thing that the Earth is doing. It's just a fractal version of the Earth, and the cell at the same time is a fractal version of the body. So the Earth has two poles, the North and the South Pole. I think like the Earth, the body also have these two poles. In the case of the body, they don't need to have negative and positive. They are fluctuating cycles, like the sun is fluctuating in their cycles. Well, the Earth too, but in a larger context. And at the same time, the cell also have these two electromagnetic centers that is a fractal version of the body. Or
idea that the electrical, what we call magnetic field, and here in this group we have lots of people who look at what that physicality is. And that was striking to me that, according to a lot of our physics models, we have, obviously there are electrical fields all over the body, and those affect. Another thing that I was talking to my father about when we lived in Southern California, a biological thing that people can't figure out. If you're in LA and you're going down a street of all these palm trees, they're all bending in the same directions all the way up. I mean, no one has a clue as to why you would plant all these trees, and even if they were the same exact cell, why would they do that? And one of the explanations is, there are magnetic or electrical fields around those, and those living things that are dividing, and you see it here. The shocking part to me on this are those little lines, those white lines in that look like the spine. So as these cells are dividing and growing, that the magnetic field itself, or the electrical field, which a lot of us think are the exact same thing, are actually affecting the biology, and it's how it's growing. It's not necessarily, it does affect it obviously as running, But you're looking at this as a process, what's happening while it's actually growing, correct?
Yes. I think the whole phenomenon, what directs the whole phenomenon of development is an electromagnetic issue. It's not, the thing is, biologists are looking into mechanical things and chemical processes, but I think what's guiding the whole thing is an electromagnetic phenomenon. It's something that emerged and somehow is independent and follows some step back, and we look at the whole and think a little bit outside the box. We may find, some other ways to see things.
Sandro,
Yeah.
About 4 or 5 years ago, I was working with 2 other gentlemen on a gravity project. One of the ones who volunteered on the project was a guy named Artie Rantham. And actually, he was at our conference last year, not to present a paper. He came because he knew me and he lived locally. He studies the effect of electromagnetic fields on plant life. It's called Electro Tropism. And I just want to mention, because it correlates with the electric effect that you have on the development of the body. He also sees that in plants and saw it as how the plant structure itself, the number of points on an oak leaf, for example. So he talked about that. So I have his address and I can get a hold of him if you're interested.
I would love to, yes, absolutely.
Okay. Just it's not the same, but it's very much related as to how it does. Yes.
And I have to add that, biologists know, like the cell, the way that cells have to communicate from cell to cell. They use a method of photons, that they emit photons and they communicate through light. It's a very tiny phenomenon, so we cannot really see it, but it's been found that this is one of the ways that cells communicate with one another. But again, we're seeing a small detail, and we're not taking a step back and looking at the whole picture, and I think that's what have to be.
When I found that the keywords under the paper were mistakenly a copy of the keywords under Dr. Colucci's paper. So that is resolved. But as I read through, I found that there is some sense in what Sandro is talking about. I'm really impressed, especially given that he's not a medical doctor, not an anatomist, no physiologist. Certainly, this is an uncharted territory, which may open a whole new field in studies. I'm impressed.
Thank you. Really appreciate what I'm trying to convey. Even though it may not be structured as an academic paper would be usually written.
No, I think it's totally fascinating. The 2 things that were, I think the one thing that really brought it home to me were the syndromes. I mean, it was just absolutely astounding that. And if you think about it, again, this is an area that everyone in life, it's like everyone who likes science wonders what the heck light really is, right? What is the heck is a magnetic field? Because it's so strong, it's so important. And that's the kind of things we do. But one of the things is, how in the heck does this little teeny-weeny thing end up being what we are? And I think the other thing that was really interesting is that you, it may be, I'm not sure it may be easier, but maybe that you're in a field, whereas if I'm a student in physics and
Being mixed. I have found all kind of responses and mostly no response. I have the hardest part of the mirror model have been the email blasting. I have sent the mirror model to thousands, probably tens of thousands of scientists have been knocking on science's door for about 7 years now. Some people, I have had some very positive response. One of the positive response have been, and I don't want to put him on the spot here, but Dr. Jerry Pollack, right from the beginning, he was one of the people that was very encouraging and very enthusiastic, and I really want to thank him. This doesn't mean that Dr. Pollack endorses what I'm saying, but it speaks tons about his commitment to keeping an open mind in science, which I think is crucial. And I have people from Harvard also give me a positive response, and I have people, there's a university, I'm not going to mention it, it's in New York, but people from that university seem to be very, very mean. they all give me negative. Ignore me. Dr. Rupert Sheldrake also have been, he's been cautious, but he finds it interesting. But ultimately what I want is not people to tell me, oh yes, it's nice, I want, here's $5 million, let's make a research. Not that I want $5 million for me, although I can do it, but it needs research, and it's people actually with hands on the project. And I really thank the John Chappell and Natural Philosophy Society for providing this platform, because it's in desperate need of this to happen. Some sort of research is not, something small like the egg experiment, I don't think it would be that expensive and can help. I always looking forward to people with new ideas on how to test this proposition. And I also think this is ultimately a physics problem, not only a biology problem. And how did I came with the idea? Well, I think I mentioned it. I was in this class on the brain after I graduated from arts, and I bumped into this image, not exactly this image, and this like open, it became evident. And I thought, like, really, do you think that like the obturator foramina is really this orbits of the skull? And I put it on the back of my mind, but often people feel insecure because scientists know so much, and how am I going to measure to them? So then I say, fuck it, I was studying art, I quit, I went to New York, and I enrolled in City College, and actually I went to study physics. For many reasons, but one of them is because I think this is ultimately a physics problem. But this image was paramount to the model. It's what jump-started the whole thing.
You're telling me that just looking at this image, you ended up in a place where you found syndromes where
Yes.
Did you have, it was a question, it was chicken and egg question, but did you already have your mirror model going and had the relationships before you found these syndromes?
Yes. All the
Wow.
evidence I found afterwards.
Wow.
But you just Google it.
That's
Shows up.